Acoustic panels. We're going to build an acoustic panel. Just like you see here, the 2x4 classic acoustic panel. But instead of 2 inches, we're going 6 inches because that's way better. So let's get going. Thanks for being here. My name is Skye. I design, build, and optimize professional home studios of all shapes and sizes. So the real question is, why would you even build acoustic panels when you can just buy them? I think that's the first important thing you need to ask yourself, because this is going to be a lot of work, and yeah, you might save some money. Like typically it's about half the cost of what you'd get them from like the big names. I'm not going to say any names. I do shop from them on occasion. But sometimes when you have a large project, it's just better to just build them, because in the long run you do save thousands and thousands of dollars. So like for instance, I'm building about 12 panels. So in our case, I think we're saving around $1,500. So it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, so materials, in this case we're just doing a simple 2x4 panel. You're gonna need a couple of 1x6 by 8 foot boards, so 2 of those. And you're going to need a fabric of some sort, so Guilford of Maine is the most popular, and some insulation. So there's just a little piece of Rockwool Safe and Sound. So you can use Owens Corning 703 if you want like the firmer, kind of like the stiffness, because you don't have to have a frame. You can just do like a fabric wrap, but I prefer to frame them. It looks a lot cleaner. Tape measure, of course. I like to use a square edge pencil, drill. I like to use these pocket drills with the screws. You're gonna need a hammer, stapler of some sort, and some fabric shears, utility knife, a little bit of wood glue, staples of course for that, and then some PPE, gloves, eyewear, maybe a mask, and some paper towels for the glue. And then of course we're going to need a saw. So I have a miter saw, not pictured currently, or you can use a circular saw or, you know, hand saw, whatever you got. But yeah, this is what we need to get going. Okay, so if it's your first time working with lumber, just to make sure that you're aware, like when it's 1x6 by 8, it's not actually that. It's really like you shave a 1/4 inch off of that. So like this little example. So the one is actually 3/4 inch, and this isn't actually 6 inches. It's 5.5. So just something to be aware of. It will be 8 feet if you get it. Sometimes they're a little longer. One of my boards in the batch that I got was a little longer, but just something to look out for. And you don't want to always trust the factory edge. So the nice thing about the square is you can double check it. So if you're trying to use the factory edge, you just want to make sure it actually is, because a few of my boards again were a little off. So I actually took a picture of one of them, but this one's good. And also when you're looking for like these common boards, it doesn't have to be in perfect shape. You just want to make sure, like when you're at the store, because you always want to buy them yourself, because if you ever order them, a lot of times they're going to give you the warped ones. So make sure you look up and down the wood, make sure it's not too bowed. Even though we're not going to be making huge panels, you still don't want it curved in all wacky ways. And you don't want any knots on the end or any splits. You'll find that a lot too. So you got to make sure you look out for all that stuff. But yeah, basically the first step, we're going to measure out our side panels. So again, the full schematics will be all in the description. But basically, we are going to measure out 2 48 inches boards. So since this is probably exactly 8 feet, let me just measure that quick. Yeah, so this board is actually a little short, so that's why you want to check. I don't know if you can see that, but we're actually 1/8 inch off. And this one's actually 1/4 inch long, so that's why you want to check. So actually what would be best is if we took this longer one, let me just shut this one down, and use this as our sides. So then also the blade that you're going to use to cut this will vary in size too. So like on the miter saw, I think it's 1/8 of an inch. And then, you know, if you're using a hand saw, it might be a 1/16, a little smaller. But just something to keep in mind too. So what I'll do is I will just measure out 48 inches from both sides because I want to use the factory edge since they're square. So I'll just take my tape measure and just quickly measure out 48. I know you're not going to see this very well, but I don't think it really matters at this point. And then go from the other side too. So it'll leave us a little gap in the middle, which is actually where our saw blade is going to operate from. And then we'll just run this right across. So we have an easy guideline for the saw. Again, you don't need to be perfect. But it is nice to have it as square as possible. But this part is going to be gone. Cool, so that's our first board. And then out of our second, we're going to do the smaller pieces. So I just know off of memory that they're going to be, you think they'd be 2 feet because we're doing a 2 foot by 4 foot panel. But actually, since these are going to be on the inside, we're going to do 22, what is it, 22 and a half. Yeah, that's what it is. So I can just use this speed square here and then measure out exactly where that is. Because it is perfect at 22 and a half. Right here. But actually we have to go, I always forget that part. 22 and a half. It's actually 21 on the inside. And then we'll just take this. The miter saw will cut it straight for us. And then I'm going to take this square edge too on this side. And it's usually wise to leave a little mark to know what side you're keeping. So I like to do like either a little check mark on the good side, or you can put like a little scribble on the side you're cutting. That way you don't cut into the good side with the saw blade. So like same over here, I can do a little check mark or a little scribble on the bad side. Yeah, so that's our measurements. So now we'll head over to the saw and rip these down real fast. Alright, and this is the results of our cuts here. Probably can't see the edges, but we're just doing butt joints. You know, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. So you don't have to use the pocket drill and the pocket screws, but I prefer them. I crack the wood a lot less, and I like how they're concealed. If you are just going to do straight butt joints, you're just going to come in from the side, then you'll want to make sure you just get the flat screws. You don't have like the bump on them, just flat wood screws. So now we're going to drill the pocket holes, and since the smaller boards are on the inside, that's the one that's going to get the pocket screws. And you can see, because we cut this at 22 and a half, it is exactly 24 feet. So that's why it's good to pay attention to that. Otherwise we would have been too long. So let's do that. Let's move these out of the way. And if you are using this, there's really no science to it other than just setting these at the proper depth. Since these are 3/4 inch thick, just make sure you're on the proper, you're not going to be able to see it, but there's like a 3/4 setting. Same with here, 3/4 setting. Otherwise you'll drill too deep. So, but I just like to quickly just put them in, roughly spaced, kind of centered, but not perfect. And then don't try to go too crazy with it, because you don't want to push all the way through the material. So yeah, just like that. And then we're gonna do the same on the other side. Make sure you don't flip it over. Like you put them the same way. Otherwise, you're gonna have to do it again. And I'll just speed through this part. All right, there we go. That's it for the messy stuff. So take a second, clean up, and then we'll put the panel together. Okay, now that we're all cleaned up, one thing I didn't mention, which is probably a good thing to point out now as we're building it, is how you're gonna mount the panels. So a lot of people will just flush mount them straight to the wall, you know, no gap. I typically, if I have the space, I will leave an air gap, and that's typically done with a couple of these little like shelf hangers. So in this case, you need 3 of them actually, I only grabbed 2. But in this case, since I'm doing that, I'm not gonna install what I would, I guess, consider like the mounting wood support. Because typically this is gonna be something like this, right? Both on this side. If I was gonna flush mount them, I would use French cleats. I think I have a set here. Yeah, so these like French cleats from my previous build. So stuff like this. So basically, if you're gonna flush mount them and you need something to hook onto, you could cut another board 22.5 and do the same exact thing with the pocket driller, just butt joint straight up. And then you could have more surface area to mount the panel with. But this is gonna be air gapped, so I don't need the extra wood in there. So yeah, good thing to point out now. So we're just gonna put it together. Quick assembly here. It's best to make your life easier. You just take your screws. The beautiful thing about these pocket holes, you can just preset your screws right in there. When you have to build a ton of panels at once, anything you can do to save time at each stage is gonna really save your ass in the long run. Because as you can see, I have most of my panels built already. I kind of do them all in each stage, so I'll cut all the lumber at once, and then I'll do like framing like this at once, insulation and back panel wrapping, stuff like that, all in kind of stages. But since I decided to do a video, this is kind of like a solo thing here. And it roughly takes about 2 hours per panel, I would say. All right, so this is kind of like the prep here. So not much other than just screwing it together at this point and making sure it's as square as possible. So, and always use wood glue for that extra support there. I'll try to do this so you can get the basics of it. So basically, if the wood is warped a little bit, you just kind of make sure as you're screwing it in, it locks in place. One side should be as flush as possible. But just a little bit of wood glue. It doesn't have to be perfect, but as close to flush as possible is the goal. Also helps if you have a drill. Okay. Start a little slow, just making sure things don't move too far out of the way. There we go. Perfect. See, that's about it. So I'll assemble the rest of the panel here. So I usually do one side at a time, so I'll just flip this over. And then you can kind of see it from a different angle here, if it doesn't mess me up too much. So it came up a little bit, but it's not even a 16th, so it's not even an issue. You could sand it down if you really wanted it smooth, or pull it back out, but really this is perfect. Just the way it is. See, that one came out a little too far. There we go. Wipe up the extra glue. And then I will do the other side. All right, now that we got all 4 parts put together, we can move on to putting on the back fabric. Okay, now we're on to the part that usually gets most people messed up, because not a lot of people are doing upholstery work these days. And it's pretty simple once you do it once or twice. The back panel, really not going to be that crazy. It's when you get to the edges of the front panel is when things get a little trickier, but I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. So the full panel is going to be wrapped in Guilford of Maine, which is like the go-to acoustic fabric, but it's about 20 some odd dollars a yard. So it's a little expensive to use all over the panel, especially if you have to double wrap it. Because keep in mind, some of the lighter fabrics, like if it's white, cream, or like this is like a platinum, I think they called it, the frame will actually show through the fabric. So it's typically recommended to either double wrap the fabric around the panel, or you can paint the outside of the frame and like all of the edges. That way it doesn't show like this blonde wood. But if you're using darker fabric, sometimes you can get away with it, but it's usually just better to plan for double wrapping. And this is actually a cheaper fabric. I found it on Amazon. This is actually a scrap piece that I'm going to use from another panel. But it comes in this 60 by 60 sheet. And this is just a cheaper black burlap. So you can see it's very transparent and much more affordable than the Guilford of Maine. Since this is going to be on the back of the panel, it doesn't really matter, but we do want something to hold in all the insulation, especially if it's going to be air gapped, because you don't want that falling out. Like the safe and sound isn't going to hurt you in any way, but it's still not something you want blowing around or falling out or anything. So basically, as much as you can see this one does have a square edge, which is going to make my life easier, and the other is a rough cut edge. So I want to just use as much square edge as possible, and this is going to be pretty close to perfect size. I'm going to have to trim off some of the excess. But all we're going to do here is go around the back and just line it straight up with the frame. So the other fabric will wrap around, and yeah, there's going to be a ton of staples in this, so prepare yourself. It's a lot of clamping with the manual stapler, so a lot of guys will get the automatic one or use like an air compressor, maybe a nail gun or something, but it's not too bad. But yeah, so I'm pretty much just double checking the size is right. Again, this is a scrap piece, so it should be good. I think it's just enough, and then I'll cut off this rough edge once we get it going. So I'm pretty much going to just start. I like to do the long sides first. And then the first side, you don't have to worry too much about stretching it this way, but you will have to make sure you're stretching it along this way because you don't want any loose bunches. So I'm just going to line up this back edge and then kind of start. Maybe I'll put one here too. And then just go down the row here. Again, with the back piece, you don't have to be that precise unless you're a little more detail oriented. I like things to be proper. So I'm just going to keep going down, and I'm just keeping this factory edge lined up. And then once we get to the other side, we'll pull the fabric tight. Just bring this over here because there's going to be a ton of staples in this, so I need at least enough staples to hold it in place and not like bunch up or stretch too far, but I don't want to go like every inch with the staple. So usually the first piece I do about a staple every 3 inches or so, and then I'll come back, and you see they're not going in all the way. I'll come back and smash it with a hammer afterwards. Okay, and then my hammer. This is gonna be loud. So then this side is where we're gonna start pulling it tight. So I don't like to work edge to edge. I will typically go in the center and then kind of work my way outwards. That way it doesn't like come to the end and then you're kind of leaning this way. Not like the fabric has a pattern per se, but it just kind of cleans up a little nicer. But what I will do, since this is a factory edge, I'm just gonna, it's a little wavy, but I'm gonna pop some staples on this side. Just to keep it in place here. So I'm just pulling it kind of away from me right now. I'm not worrying about like this way just yet. So we're just gonna keep, and then the overlap will be fine. We'll cut off the rest of that if you have any. Yeah, if you're using the full like panel, you'll have to cut off one side anyway. So I like to still use as much edge, like factory edge, as possible on one side. That way you don't have to cut both sides. You can just cut maybe one or two sides. So let me hit this up. Okay. You can see we have just enough fabric to get across with a little bit of extra. So you can work your way down from the side like this, which is fine. I'm just making sure, because this is a piece that I cut that I didn't. Yeah, so we're good. I like to find somewhere in the center, especially since this is the back piece. And then I'll just pull it tight there. Make sure I'm kind of pulling it towards the front of the panel without staples. And then I'm going to put, basically starting here. Yeah, that's pretty good. And then this wrinkle at the end will be brought in from this pull here, so I'm not too worried about that. I just keep working its way down. Again, I'm like pulling towards me and also to the front a little bit. And I'm doing a little more staples on this side just because now we're stretching the fabric. So I'm usually a staple every 2 inches or so. No exact science to this. There we go. Alright, and loud noises once again. Okay. And the last side. So again, we're going to pull out all those final wrinkles. I usually just grab it, put my hand down on it, and then just push it down. Again, I start in the center. I'll do 3, and then just work my way over. It might seem like you're overstretching the fabric, but as you can see, it does relax after you pull it down. So don't be afraid to really wrench down on it, because it will relax better into place. There we go. Alright, now it's just to cut off the excess, and then we can go on to stuffing the insulation. Just rip down the edge. I'm kind of just going with the shears right along the edge of the wood. You could use a utility knife too for this part, but again, it doesn't have to be pretty, because this is all going to get covered up by the good fabric anyway. And then same down this side. This stuff is messy though, I'll give it that. Okay, so we'll clean this up and move on to the installation. Okay, so I got the panel flipped over. As you can see, I got a nice backing on it. So it is time to put in the insulation. I put on some long sleeves, some gloves. This stuff will make you a little itchy. Not good to breathe in either, but it's not going to kill you. It's a lot safer than the Owens Corning 703, which is fiberglass, which is like this stuff here. I'm going to keep it in the plastic, but this is like a rigid board. So the stuff we have is a lot looser, but safer. This is this right here. So this is a full panel. So this is, I can't remember the measurements, like 47 inches by I think 15 and a half maybe, or 15. So it's designed to fit perfectly through or between studs in the wall, 16 inches apart. And what's great about using this for the 2x4 panels, pretty much all we need is 3 full pieces. So since this is 6 inches, they say they're 3 inches, but sometimes they take a bit to expand. So they're just a hair less than that. So we're going to need 2 full pieces here, and then we're going to take 1 more piece and cut it in half, and then it'll fill up the whole panel here. So here's the second piece. You see, it'll be okay if it pokes over the edge a little bit, because the fabric will hold it all in place. It's not going to look too crazy. So don't worry if it's not flush with the wood. We have about 7.5 inches of space here, or 7 inches. So once we put it in like tight, it'll be about 7.5 inches. It's kind of hard to see, but so that's why the 2x4 panel is perfect with the materials. It just all makes sense coming together. So I'll cut that up here. Let me just put this down for a second. And it's really easy to cut. This is where the utility knife comes in. You can get a specific blade to cut this, but it's really not necessary. I just use a utility knife and then my square edge. So what I'm going to do is just roughly find 7.5 inches, which is, yeah, because this is what? Yeah, this is 15 inches. So 7.5 is right dead center. I'm going to find that. It doesn't have to be perfect. Then I make two cuts. And I try not to go too fast, especially since right now I'm not wearing a mask, but as long as you don't like go too quick and put up a bunch of dust and stuff, you'll be okay. So I make 2 cuts. So I'll just make a cut here. Just move it down and do it one more time. 7.5, roughly straight. Doesn't have to be perfect. All the way to the end. And then I'll put the square away and then just fire through the rest of this. Just following that, using it as a guideline basically. There we go. So now we got 2 pieces right down the center. And you see it'll be a nice snug fit, which is exactly what we want. Because then when we flip it over too, we don't have to worry about it falling out. Again, the slower that you move, the better. Then you don't get a bunch of particles. Again, it's not something that's going to kill you, but it might give you a little cough. Your body does break it down, unlike the fiberglass, which is pretty rough on you. And just get it flush. And this edge, especially if you double wrap the panel, won't show up. And even if you single wrap it, it's not going to be an issue. But I do like to get it as flush as possible. Give it a little pat. Don't mind if it poofs in certain areas. This fabric is going to be stretched and pulling it down. So there we go. And now it's time to get wrapping. You having fun yet? We're in the home stretch, so we're almost there. So we're gonna wrap the panel. I'm gonna do it twice, but the first one I'm gonna use this burlap because I don't want to use 2 layers of the Guilford of Maine. So as you can see, it comes in a 60 by 60 square, and I'll have a link to this. But you can use any fabric really. It's just the main point of the fabric, or like the main thing it needs to be, is breathable. So burlap's great because you see, like, you can see right through it. If you can see light, air's gonna pass through it just fine. You don't want like a tight linen. Cotton can be okay, but usually burlap is like the way to go, especially if you want something cheap. Because even if you don't get it in black, you can get like the tan burlap even cheaper. All right, so we have to kind of center it on this board here just to make my life easier. And then I'm going to put the panel upside down. But since the insulation's so packed in, I don't have to worry about it falling out, which is a good benefit. All right, so I didn't even have to touch the insulation, so that's a good sign. So what I want to do is reduce as much scissoring as I can. I don't want to be cutting a bunch of edges. You don't have to cut this excess off, but I'd rather not have all that there, especially since these are for a client. These aren't my panels. If they were my panels, I might be a little more loose with the fabric and the cutting lines and all that. But so I'm just going to pull this closer so I can have something like that. It's like 1.5 inches, 2 inches, something like that, all the way around. Then I have to make sure the edges will get fully covered. So we'll square it off eventually, because you see this fabric is a little wrinkly. So we got to make sure we pull it a little tight. I'm just making sure the edges will be fully covered all the way around, at least 1.5 inches. Just like this. I'm just checking to make sure it's something like this, maybe a little less, but there we go. Yeah, the sides are actually going to be a little less, but you can kind of see that there if I pull it over. So that's what it looks like on both sides. About 1 inch on the sides, on the short sides, and then a little longer on this one. Let's go a little bit less. You don't want to go crazy with the staples and then have to pull it out and redo it all. It is a pain, especially if you're stapling by hand like I am. So best to just double check all of your edges are good. And this is fine. Okay. So now it's the same thing we did with the back panel. We just start on one edge and we just work our way around. I usually do both the long sides first. So I will start here on this far edge in the center, and then I'll work my way to either side. Let's see, one in the middle, and the creases are fine because we're going to stretch it this way too. And the first edge doesn't matter too much about getting it perfect, because that's what the other sides are that we're actually stretching towards. There we go. Yeah, so like this crease in the middle will be gone. It's not even a concern. I'll just fire them down the side. Since it's going to be double wrapped, you don't have to go crazy with the staples. Again, I do it every 2-3 inches. Okay, so that's that side. Now all I really have to do is just pull on this far side here, just to make sure we're tight all the way across. And then we'll pull out all those wrinkles. So you can see this side looks pretty good now. We still have enough on the edges, so we did pretty good with the centering. All right, so now I'm going to do the same thing I did on this side. I'm going to do on the far side here. Easier, I find, to do both the long edges and then come back in the center. So I'll flip the excess over here and then use this as a grip. I'll pull the fabric up and then away from me. So first up, pulling it tight, and then away from me here. And I'll put a couple in the center and then work my way across. All right, so same thing. Just go from the center. I'm going to work my way to the right first. My right, your left. And then come back and do the other side. So again, it's up, pull, and I'm good putting it a little bit this way, out, and staple every 2 inches. Anything, grab extra, up, out, and then forward. Alright, so that's that side, and we'll do the same going back this way. And this is the under layer, so you don't have to worry too much about being perfect. Like if they're deep enough or if you end up bunching up the fabric, those will show through. So it's always just triple checking everything. And worst case, if you have to pull out the staples, you know, it's you just got to do it. So, but I'm doing the same thing here. So it's up, out, and then towards the front of the panel. Okay, I'm gonna smash them all in with a hammer before I do the sides. So at this point, I can also cut off the excess. That way I just don't have a bunch of extra fabric here getting in the way. So I'll just do that now. Not getting too close to the staples. You can either match this side roughly, but you just don't want to get too close to the staples. So I'm just eyeballing it. So this is where it gets a little tricky for some, not knowing how to do a clean edge here. But I like to do these square edges first, and then I'll come up and pull this. So what I do is I just fold over. I'm pretty much going to cut a square out of this corner. So I'm going to fold this over, and then I'm going to put some staples here to hold this side, and I'm going to do the same here. And I'm kind of checking to make sure like this far side doesn't have any wrinkles, so I'm going to give it a little pull, and then kind of making a triangle down here. But we're not going to cut that off, so we're just going to put some staples to hold this in place. 3 staples is good. Hammer those in quick. And then we could do the same on this side. Alright, so we have to cut the square out of here, but first we have to go along these staples here. So keep like this triangle section here, and then cut a line just right at the base of the staples. So it's about 1 inch from the edge of the board. So just go straight down. But don't go all the way down to the base of the wood. Leave about a 1/2 inch, basically to the bottom of the staple here. So about a 1/2 inch gap there. And then we're going to fold this part out. And then try to line up the edge of the fabric to the edge of the wood. Sometimes it won't because there's a little bunch up here, which is fine. And then this is the little piece we're going to cut out. So you want to leave a flap about the same width as you have here, or maybe like a 1/2 inch or so. So then I'm going to take this, just like that. So then that's the piece we're going to remove there. So then when we put it up, we'll eventually fold this up and over. So, and then we want to clean up these corners too. So what I've been doing lately, instead of adding way more staples than I need to, I kind of just grab this, pull it over, and then I don't cut right at the edge, but I cut about a 1/4 inch above that, and then I just rip this whole thing off, just like that. So you can put staples in here, but eventually this is going to get folded over, so that'll be all fine. So then it's the same thing over here. Yeah, so it's like you fold up this edge a little bit, and then don't go right to the edge, but kind of 1/4 inch forward. And then I put the shears right along the wood, and then just rip that off, just like that. Less fabric that bunches up in the corner. So, and then here, we're a little close to not being able to wrap it up, just barely making it over, so we got lucky. But I like to start in the center as always. So since this is the first edge, I'm going to pull this out, come up, and then center, and then go to the sides. But let me double check this. Don't want to pull too much and not have enough on the other side, so which is good. So pretty much just like that from the center. There we go. And I'll go this way first, since this is the side with the least amount of fabric. Just a little pull. Then if you really have to stretch the fabric, you should put some extra staples in there. Extra staples will keep it from ripping, because you're putting a lot more pressure on the fabric. So once you get closer to the edge, you kind of want to stop, and then we'll fold this over. But let me do this side first. Alright, so now that I'm about to the edge, I'll show you. Here's the corner flap. So what you want to do is fold that flap inside. So we're going to get this nice square edge here. There we go. And then I kind of just keep pulling on it. Maybe you have to pull this top flap in a little bit, because the idea is to pull this up over the edge and then right alongside this edge, and this is where we're going to staple it. So then this ends up being nice and clean. Alright, so same thing with this edge. So the flap, again, we cut it a little close here, so we don't have too much, but there's just enough. So again, I'm folding this flap part in, making sure it's square along the edge, pulling it tight, bringing it over, and then we're going to staple that down. A couple extra staples since that part's pretty tight. And then we're just going to hammer all those down and do the same on the other side. Alright, and then there's the first layer. Almost there. One more layer. The beauty layer. Okay, so as you can see, the first layer is on, looking good. So maybe this is your finished panel, but for me, I gotta do one more layer, the beauty layer. So let me get this out of the way, lay down the good fabric. So, alright, so again, the panel is face down again. You see this is the back side. So all we gotta do is position it kind of in the center where we can get that same layer on there. Because again, this fabric is expensive, so the less you waste, the better, certainly. So now I'm gonna do the same thing as I did all the other times. I'm gonna start in the center, now that I've checked we're good all the way around. Fold it over, and then just work my way to either side. Since this is the finished fabric, I'm gonna do a little more staples, probably every inch or so, because I probably will want to make sure this sits nicely. There are 0 wrinkles in this one. At this point, there's a good chance you're gonna hit some of the nails or staples underneath, but just gotta either pull them out or hammer them in, whatever you feel like doing. Not gonna hurt nothing. Okay, and I pretty much go all the way to the edge too. I'm maybe 1/2 inch to 1 inch on both sides. And I'm just gonna hammer this side in quick. So I'm gonna pull the fabric up over the edge here. Because I'm gonna cut all this extra off so we don't have this roll getting in our way. So, but what I'll check first is that it's pulled tight. I still have a few more panels to make after this, so I want to make sure I save as much of this fabric as possible. There we go. So that's about good there. And then I'm just going to leave 1.5 inches to 2 inches. It'll be just enough to pull out still, because you need to have something to grip onto. Okay, so now it'll be the same thing, so I'll just double check that it's pulled over fully. Just give it a few tugs, and then I'll just go from the center and work my way down. Same thing as before, just the second layer. So we're going to start with the edges, fold them over just like that, cut out the squares, cut off the excess, and we're good to go. So you'll see the same exact process. This time I'm going to put a few more staples in here. I'm going to do 4 evenly spaced on the side, pulling it tight. About 1/2 inch from the edge of the wood. It's a tough angle. Now we'll cut off the excess. First this way, just past the staples, so about 1 inch, straight down, but not all the way down. Leave yourself 1/4 to 1/2 inch from the bottom. Take it, fold it over, make a little square, line it up with the edge of the wood. Leave the same amount of width there, about 1 inch. A little flappy. And cut off the excess square. And same on this side. Alright, and we'll do the corners again. So be sure not to get too close to the edge if you're going to do it this way. You can just fold this over and staple it if you like. I just like to cut it off. There's already enough fabric on here, don't need all that extra. As long as you leave the little roll over here. Alright, so I'll still start in the middle and then work my way over. I'm going to do 1 inch apart on all the staples too. And then we'll do the flaps. Again, just fold it in, right along the edge there. I'm going to have to tuck this in a little more. Because once you pull it over, you don't want it hanging over the edge. And let's see, a little more. There we go. Just like that. So it's a nice clean edge all the way up. And then I'll put, since there's so many staples here now between all the layers, I'll usually put the first 2 at an angle. Just like that, so they're kind of 45 degrees almost. And then the rest, just hoping I'm not gonna hit too many. And then, same for the second. So the flap, fold it in, tuck it over, make sure that little nub is in. This doesn't extend past the edge. Just like that, nice and tight. Angled corners, and then fill the gaps. And then I'll do the same on the other side. Okay, and that about wraps it up. So you can clean up these little things at the end, these little strings, just get them out of the way. If you really wanted a cleaner look. But yeah, at this point, if you did add the extra support bracket to do a flush mount with some French cleats maybe, you could take this time to now just put those in since the panel's already up and ready. Do something like this, you know, space them out a couple inches apart. Or if you're doing what I'm doing with the air gap, you basically need like 3 of these. I think these are 6-inch shelf hangers. And basically when I get to the studio where I'm going to install these, I'm just going to kind of measure it out. Maybe I'll get lucky with some studs, but these don't weigh that much. It's maybe 20 pounds. Yeah, it'll be here and here, and then you need a 3rd one to support the bottom, just right in the center. And the air gap will help hit more of those lower frequencies, low mids. So yeah, so let me flip over the panel, give you a little glamour shot, and show you all of the work. All right, there we have it. Brand new, custom built acoustic panel, 2 foot by 4 foot. 6 inches wide, deep words. I'm exhausted. I hope you're as sweaty as I am. It was quite the journey. Thanks for joining me. Yeah, all of the materials and the tools that I used will be in the description. Probably some links too to most of it, if not all of it. So thanks for sticking around, and good luck with your build. So tired.